cottage, clean ourselves with steam. Resting in front of the fire, I soon fall into a dream. The frost is white upon my skin, the air is cold, the air is thin. Run through the valley and over the hill, it's the unforgettable thrill. The frost is white upon my skin, the air is cold, the air is thin. Run through the valley and over the hill, it's the unforgettable thrill of hunting moomin, of hunting moomin. The forest, the snow crisp and clear, the birch ghosts in the pine trees, we hunt other than deer. The frost is white upon my skin, the air is cold, the air is thin. Run through the valley and over the hill, it's the unforgettable thrill of hunting moomin, hunting moomin. Our rifles are heavy as well as our packs. Our eyes scan the ground, will we soon find their tracks? The frost is white upon my skin, the air is cold, the air is thin. Run through the valley and over the hill, it's the unforgettable thrill of hunting moomin, of hunting moomin. Back at the cottage, clean ourselves with steam. Resting in front of the fire, I soon fall into a dream. The frost is white upon my skin, the air is cold, the air is thin. Run through the valley and over the hill, it's the unforgettable thrill. The frost is white upon my skin, the air is cold, the air is thin. Run through the valley and over the hill, it's the unforgettable thrill of hunting moomin, of hunting moomin. The snow crisp and clear, the birch ghosts in the pine trees, we hunt other than deer. The frost is white upon my skin, the air is cold, the air is thin. Run through the valley and over the hill, it's the unforgettable thrill of hunting moomin, of hunting moomin. rifles are heavy as well as our packs. Hi, it's Kevin Lebates here, and this is the Orthoverse live stream number 6. Now, I don't think we actually have anyone live at this very moment, which makes me wonder if I've accidentally posted the wrong time. But in any case, these things are recorded, so somebody may go back and look at it later on. And in the meantime, it still remains good practice for me to do this on a weekly basis and to improve my ability to actually talk off the top of my head rather than planning ahead. And I get the impression that's what most live streamers do. They have a topic that they discuss, but they don't sit there and work out exactly what they're going to say, which is what I used to do with my short 5-minute videos. I used to plan what question was I tackling, the points I wanted to make, and how I opened the video and how I finished it. And you can do that when it's just 5 minutes or even 10. The issue with this is that I have a few vague ideas about what I want to talk about, but really you're looking at feedback from people who are chatting in the chat with you. And fortunately, I can see here that Leos is with me, so I'm not on my own. That's a relief. And I'm going to begin with, before I switch to the game video, the game screen, pointing out that there's something different about me today in this live stream, and that is no headphones. And there's a funny reason behind that, and that is that I've been wearing headphones for the last 5 live streams, despite the fact that I can't actually hear anything through them. And I've been wearing them because other live streamers wear headphones, but it turns out that other live streamers are either playing a game that actually has sound, and the Orthoverse does not have sound yet, so I'm not getting anything from the game there, or they possibly have enough audio equipment that they can actually get some kind of feedback as to what they're saying in the mic in their headphones, so they're hearing what they're saying there. I'm guessing, but most streamers are not actually hearing what they're saying. They can't actually tell what is going on, and you just have to assume that you've got everything set up correctly. And you know, I had some problems early on in the earlier streams that I wasn't loud enough, or in some cases that I hadn't muted my mic. People got to hear me coughing at the end because it does make your throat dry talking like this. So I've been wearing headphones for no reason whatsoever. And an hour of wearing headphones actually makes my ears hurt, and it's not the most comfortable thing. I don't have an expensive, rich live streamer headphone, and in any case, I tend to like to have my ears free anyway. I'm not somebody who spends most of their life with headphones on. So I've decided to ditch them. And that's especially funny because the last stream, I think it was, or maybe the one before, I worked out that I couldn't wear my hat because it didn't fit over the headphones. And as it happened, I didn't even need to be wearing them. I'm not going to wear it today because I don't have it up here with me, I think, anyway. Oh, I do have it behind me. Well, maybe if enough people ask, I will put the wizard hat on. But so that's a funny little story about how you do stuff because other people are doing it, and then without even thinking about it. It's kind of in our nature as human beings to mimic other people because we assume that they know what they're doing, and it's only when you sit back and think, why am I doing that exactly, that you may realize that what you're doing is totally pointless. So with that said and done, let's move over to, there we go, the game screen. Excuse me, I'm going to have a little sip of water first. Bit of a dry throat today. So Leo says, I thought some of the live streamers may use headphones to hear if there are more of them talking with each other, to hear what the other streamer says. Yes, that would be right, Leo. So if there's other people actually as guests in the live stream, then you are going to need to hear them, and you will need headphones for that. But I'm thinking here, for example, of my kids watching Dan TDM, and he's there with his headphones on. At least he was 3 years ago when they were watching it enthusiastically, and he wasn't talking to anybody else. He was mainly screaming at the screen. There's something about the way that that these live streamers talk, most of them get awfully overexcited and really scream loudly, and my kids seem to like that. They pick out videos where the players get overexcited, hyperactive, and scream at the screen, and I find that a bit disturbing myself, but they're kids. Who knows what the reasoning behind all that is. Anyway, so here we are in the Orthoverse. I think it's just you and me, Leos. It's fair enough. We can't expect everybody to turn up every Saturday except me, because I sort of made a commitment to do this for at least 3 months, and we're already over a month in, so that's quite something. Anyway, big reveal coming up. Actually, probably big MetaMask login. Nope, I'm still logged in. There you go. You can see it already. There's been a change to the sky. And what I have done is I've added the sun and I've added clouds in the background. Oh, I've got another person saying, hey, I'm here. The YouTube stats thing lags, I think, by about a minute or two. And in fact, when I look across, I can see that I'm, it's about 15 seconds, actually. So nice that you're here, Infotrix. And Ken, now I know who that is. It's good to work that out. For those of you who don't know, Ken is probably the most enthusiastic builder in the Orthoverse after me. So yes, people are commenting. Clouds, sun, looks lovely. I think it does too. And it was, well, I would say it's surprisingly simple. And I'll give the backstory to what was going on here. I've been working for the last 2 weeks to upgrade and overhaul the way that the Orthoverse voxel world saves and loads lands, and in particular how it gets updates when people flip their token or transfer their token to somebody else, or so on, or level up their token. That's the big one. And turns out it's surprisingly difficult. So what you want in these kind of situations is you want a push from outside into the game. You want the game to be sitting there waiting for someone to send it information to say, hey, this token now belongs to this person, or this token has now leveled up from 4 to 5, something like that. It's very hard to do that with blockchain, and it's also very hard to do it with the way that the game is currently designed. Everything is done on a pool basis. So that means the game has to pull the information from the database, and the database is pulling the information from the blockchain, because you can't make a push blockchain. You can't tell all the nodes out there to push information into your database. Or rather, technically you could run your own modified node and have that node checking every single transaction that goes in to see if there are any related to, in my case, the Orthoverse, then pass them and work out, oh, that's a level up transaction, check out what the number is, and then feed that into the database. That would be a push. But I really haven't got the time to hack Geth, which is the Golang Ethereum client or node software. And so what Richard and I are doing is we scrape the blockchain. We actually use, I think it's Alchemy that we used in Fura initially, but we're using Alchemy now. So Alchemy runs a whole bunch of nodes, and they provide an API, and you can make a query and it'll go and get the results for you. And it's not amazingly efficient at the moment. It takes about 4 minutes, I think, from start to finish for it to scrape all 1,933 tokens, and that's just going to get longer as we get more tokens. So at some point we are going to have to set up our own Ethereum node specifically for the purpose of monitoring what the state of the Orthoverse is, I'm guessing. But it's one of those things that I'd really rather put off until it becomes absolutely pressing and necessary, because people are updating so much. But the activity in the Orthoverse is not so intense that we actually need that kind of responsiveness. So we scrape everything every 4 hours and we put it in a database. Richard's done a lot of work to enable that, because we used to stick it in a file, because I used the quick and dirty approach of scrape. We put it in a file, pass the file to get the information you want out. And Richard rightly pointed out that you should have a database for that kind of thing. Databases are good for persistent storage. Files work, but really it's not the right tool for the job, in the same way that you can use a a tin of paint to hammer a nail into a piece of wood, but it's better to use a hammer. Anyway, so the database now is therefore updated every 4 hours, and the Orthoverse voxel world wasn't it was still using the file, and then Richard provided an API that allows me to query. And what am I doing? I'm using the API to effectively reconstruct the file in memory in the Orthoverse. So it's kind of part way there. But my hope is that now that I've got the prototype of it working and it seems to function okay, and it doesn't seem to have slowed down the system, and it doesn't seem to have overloaded the web client, because we're really at the limit of what Chrome can cope with and other web browsers in terms of how big things are and how many objects there are that need to be tracked. There's a limit of about 2 gigabytes in a web browser for a tab to do stuff, and it's hard-coded. You can't go beyond it, and that's what's on everybody's machine. So we have to keep everything within those limits. Anyway, I got immensely sidetracked there, but I'll finish it off because I was going to talk about the sky, the beautiful cloudy night sky that we can see here. So just to finish off, I think I've got it working. It just needs testing because these things always have a number of problems, and I need to be very careful with this because people are actually starting to put serious amounts of time into building structures in this voxel world. And it's not just me, it's other people. And fortunately, I've built a substantial structure too, which I would not like to lose. And I am making sure that whenever I need to do anything to protect my structure, when I realize that there's a problem, I do it for all the other things that have been saved too. So hopefully these changes that I'll be rolling out in the next week or two will mean that the Orthoverse will pick up on changes in the tokens more quickly. The other week, Mitko is a guy on LinkedIn I've connected with, had revealed a token, and something had gone wrong with the scraper and hadn't been picked up, and I had to go in and do it manually. And I'd like that to work automatically. I'd like it to be that whenever anybody makes a change on the blockchain, our backend system picks that up eventually and handles it all automatically. I should not be going in and doing this myself. Partially, I can get away with it at the moment because there's so little activity, but it doesn't feel proper. And who knows, maybe before it's doomed, the Orthoverse might get some superb traction, and we might end up with tens or hundreds of people regularly trying to check in on their token. Oh, I'm going to turn around because it's daytime, and there we can see the sun rising. So I was going to talk about this. Now, you look at this and you see the clouds, and they look really impressive because they look like real clouds. And they, if you notice, they are drifting slowly across the sky as well. And they were static 2 days ago, and I just felt, initially I thought, oh, fantastic, I've got clouds working. And then I thought, it just doesn't feel right. They need to be moving. So I made the move. And then there's the sun. And as you can see, the sun is just a circle. Right? It's actually a circle rendering of a sphere. The object in computer memory is a model of a sphere. But for all intents and purposes, just like our sun in a familiar sun up in our familiar sky, it's a circle. And if you were to ask somebody which of these things do you think was more effort, most people who don't know about computer programming would look at them and say, oh, I imagine the clouds were very, very difficult, and I imagine that the sun was very easy. And they would be completely and utterly wrong. And now I'm going to quickly take a break from that and actually look at the comments, because I keep forgetting to do this, and I must learn because it's an important technique of live streaming. So Lisa said, Kia, before I try myself later, last week you shared the trick to reuse materials by saving game, demolishing building to get materials returned to safe state before demolition. Building back materials for reuse there now. Can I do this multiple times? Yes, you can. If you save your world once, you can reload it as many times as you like. Now, there is a delay on it, and I'm actually, people who've been doing a lot of building, I think next week I'm going to reduce that by half, the delay, so you'll be able to save twice as often. So I imagine that Infotrix at this point is going to go, yay! So you can reload the same land over and over again, which means that indeed you can demolish a building, reload it,
demolish it again, reload it again, and now you've got enough materials for 2 of those buildings. I was going to have conservation of mass in the Orthoverse, but now that I've been building for weeks, there's enough difficulty as it is to build stuff without having to really go to the ends of the earth. I know there are people out there who do crazy Minecraft stuff where they try to build the Taj Mahal in survival mode in Minecraft, and they set it on hardcore just to see if they can do it. I don't think the average person really wants that kind of effort. There needs to be a little bit of a challenge. I think you shouldn't just be able to magically create as many building materials as you like. There should be a process involved. But I'm happy for it to be the this save and load stuff. So and then Leos has posted a funny, what looks like a hand with 2 drops of blood squirting out of one of the fingers. I don't know if that's meant to be a wave, but if it is, then YouTube really need to change their emoji rendering. Let me... no, I don't think I can drag it across safely. Anyway, for those of you who are following in the chat, you can see what I mean. I have a real difficulty with emojis. I can't even recognize half the time what they're meant to represent. And when I do recognize what they represent half the time, I don't actually understand what the message that is being communicated is by them. So for me, it's one of the worst forms of communication known to mankind. However, nobody else seems to have this problem. I don't know why. And then on top of it, of course, you've got things like Gen Z deciding that they're going to use emojis in slang ways. So they'll use a skull to show that they think something is fantastically cool. So that like adds a third level of obfuscation. So basically, if I'm reading a message from a Gen Zer and they use an emoji, I have a 1 in 8 chance of understanding what it is that they're trying to communicate. And I think part of this is that every platform has its own interpretation of these emojis. So it's not like sort of going, right, I'm going to use, well, I suppose it is a bit like using a font where one might use Helvetica and the other one might use Arial, and another one might use Roboto, for example, for their fonts. But the thing is that these emojis can look vastly different, and hence you see Leos using a strange wave emoji that looks like a hand with 2 drops of blood spurting out of the ring finger. Anyway, Leos, you should put a comment in the chat explaining what it is. Are you just waving to say hello, or are you trying to draw attention to something? Anyway, I can tell that this is going to be the story that never completes, because I've been talking about these clouds and this sun. You'll notice, by the way, the sun is now high up and it is much yellower than it was at the horizon, and it's also a lot smaller. Now, there's this optical illusion, namely that when the moon or the sun is near the horizon, it looks much bigger than it's when it's way up above your head. So, and people say that, they'll say, oh yeah, I saw this huge moon on the horizon yesterday. And the fact is that actually it's the same size. If you take a coin and you hold it up so it only just blocks the moon, you're sort of holding it up, like that to block the celestial object. Let's say you're holding a 10-cent piece, and you find out that you have to hold it exactly a meter away from your face for it to perfectly obscure the moon when it's on the horizon. You'll find that it's exactly the same when you are looking at it directly overhead, and that means that the moon is the same size at the horizon and right above you. And if you don't believe me, give it a go. Next time there's a full moon, go out when there's a moonrise and take a coin with you and measure the distance with a tape measure, or estimate it, and then wait until the moon is high in the sky and looks a lot smaller, and hold that coin up again, and you'll find out that indeed the size hasn't changed. And the reason that the moon looks bigger at the horizon is, the explanation I read is that when the moon is high up in the sky, there's nothing for you to compare it with. So you have your brain can't determine how far away it is. and so it thinks it's immensely distant, and your brain tells you that it's small. Whereas when it's on the horizon, it's behind, the horizon's trees, houses, chimneys, hills. Depends on where you live, I suppose. Could be coconut trees, and that gives you some kind of context. And because your brain can't work out that it's actually millions of miles away, it assumes that it's just behind those things, and that causes you that causes you to perceive the moon as being much larger than it actually is. So that's the reasoning anyway. But it doesn't work. The illusion doesn't work in the Orthoverse. If I have this sun and it's just the size of my pointer, and I move it down here, it doesn't look any bigger there. It looks exactly the same size. So I don't know why that is. So what I did was I artificially expand it as it gets closer to the horizon, so that you can have a delightful large red sunset. So I was going to explain why it is that putting the clouds moving across the sky was really simple, and making the sun work was actually surprisingly hard. So the clouds moving along the sky took me all of, I think it was just under an hour. And the way you do it is you put a giant box around the viewer. So I'm using a 3D rendering engine because Prismarine.js, the open source project that is providing all the heavy lifting libraries that are handling this voxel world, I've just been adapting them for my own purposes. So they use 3.js, and 3.js is a free open source JavaScript implementation of a 3D rendering engine so that it can run in a browser. And that means that it allows you to create shapes, cubes, spheres, cuboids. You can attach things together, and you can map textures onto them. So you can take a JPEG and stick it on a box and have that box then spinning, and it does all the complicated maths for you. And it's a really, really good piece of software, 3.js. And especially given that it's free, I mean, that makes it incredibly value for money, but it works really well. And so every single object that you see in the Orthoverse is rendered by 3.js, and the sky used to be that sort of orangey red color because it was the default background. And so what I did was I created a cube that is I think it's 1,000 by 1,000 by 1,000 units. For comparison, the edge of the Orthoverse, as far as you can see, I think is about 80 units or 100 units away. And then I mapped cloud textures onto it. So it's like one line of code to say, take this JPEG and stick it on this face of the cube. And I went and looked, and there are these things called skyboxes. So it's a collection of 6 images. It's effectively, you take a fishbowl lens camera, and you take a 360 photograph, so it's got everything, and then you map that onto a cube, and then you take those 6 images that you get, and that's what is used to build the skybox. And then if you stick those 6 images onto a cube again, you get the same effect of being inside a sphere with an image projected onto it. And if the image that you make in your skybox is of clouds or of stars or something like that, then you get the feeling that you're actually looking off into the vast distance, even though you're not. So it really is just a line of code to create this box, and then a line of code to map these 6 images onto it, and that gives you the clouds. And then there's this other library called Tween, which stands for in between, and it allows you to it handles moving an object smoothly. So if you want to move in this case, I'm using it to rotate the box very, very slowly. So at the moment, you can see the Orthoverse, and it's inside a sort of a large cube. Actually, I'm going to move over a bit there. It's inside a large cube. It's got like wallpaper plastered on all 6 sides, each one of which is a picture of clouds, and they all map together seamlessly. And then I'm making it rotate slowly. So and that gives you clouds. And The longest part was the editing of the images to cut out the ground that you could see at the bottom, because when I have this rotating, if you had hills and stuff, then the hills would be rotating the background too. And I did try making a second box just to have a long distance landscape, but it doesn't actually work that well to have some kind of world off in the distance. It doesn't map right when you go too far up. And I think I could probably actually go into my own land. Oh, yeah, here's another thing. When you shift your view, it's kind of stretched at the edge, and you can make the sun really shows you that it's your eyes are not perfect here. You're not. It's a good thing that your focus is at the center of the screen, and this stuff at the edges is just kind of peripheral, because it does look very weird off at the side. See how it's stretched? Anyway, so that's why the box was really simple. I mean, it really is the equivalent of taking a shoebox and sticking 6 photographs on it and then putting it on a turntable. Just the computer version. The sun, on the other hand, now that was a bit more of a nightmare, because the Orthoverse uses Prisma.js's time system, so there are 24,000 ticks in a day, and the idea is that 12,000 ticks would be a day and 12,000 ticks would be a night. But I got fed up with the night being so long. I mean, it still feels tediously long, but I decided the daylight would be 2/3 and night would be 1/3. Although night's more bearable now that there are clouds, and I do like the way that when it gets dark, that they get that kind of silver glow that you get with normal clouds in at night time. You know, especially when you've got a full moon and you have these kind of autumn clouds drifting across the sky, they look like this sort of spun silver. And this occurred naturally, because what I have here is it's a desaturated image, and then during the day the background is red, and so that makes the clouds look red, and then at night the background is black, and so it's gone monochrome. So it's kind of this is one of the things I was mentioning in the description of this live stream. Some of the things that happen aren't actually planned, and they match real life quite well. Other things you have to struggle like hell to get them to match real life, but this is one that occurred naturally. So anyway, so the reason why the sun was so hard was because I've got to make it rotate around the land, but it can't take because the day's meant to be twice as long as the night. That means it has to kind of go slowly round half and then twice as fast around the bottom. And I ended up doing a whole bunch of modulo arithmetic, and eventually I did a bit of it empirically. I'm supposed to be a mathematician, but to be honest, arithmetic was never my strong point. I never bothered learning my multiplication tables, for example, because I found that I could just find the answer by adding, which is fine when you are 8, because being able to add reasonably quickly allows you to give the impression you've learnt your times tables. However, then by the time you're 15, no one is checking anyway, plus we have calculators now. But it is a regret in hindsight that I didn't learn them properly, because I think it would have been useful. But anyway, so I did a whole bunch of it by trial and error, and then I also had to come up with an algorithm for the scaling. There's quite a few sines and causes being used in this. And then also, now the sun has gone just when I want to talk about it, you notice that it starts off very, very red, and by the time it's up at the top of the sky, it looks yellow. So I had to have some kind of color transition, and boy, color transitions are really hard. I mean, I kind of thought, you can represent color in web pages with a hex number. It's like 6 digits. So FFFFFF is white, and 00000 is black, and FF0000 is red, and so on and so forth. So you've got RGB, the 3 components. And I just thought, well, how hard can it be to transition from red through orange to yellow? And the answer is, it turns out that the path through colors that we as human beings perceive as sensible changes from one color to the next, and that we see as continuous changes in color, i.e. the intensity of the color, i.e. the saturation isn't getting more intense, or the hue is not changing, or things like that, is really, really hard to calculate. It's not our perception of these things doesn't match what is actually going on in the numbers. So you can't just sort of do it with a linear interpolation where you say, right, I'm just, red is FF0000, and I want to head towards yellow, which is full red plus full green. So what I'll do is I'll just loop from 0 to 256 for the green component, incrementing it by every fraction of a second while keeping the red constant. It doesn't look right. So that was a bit of a struggle too, and I didn't want to have to kind of specify every single color in a big table, because it's another bunch of data that has to go into the web browser. In the end, I found a kind of 3-step method where it looks reasonably okay when it transfers it in. I think if you're looking at it, you may be able to notice the transitions. But yeah, so getting the sun to expand and shrink so that we get the horizon optical illusion, getting the color to change so we get a nice ruddy red sunrise, and then have the sun being yellow when it's at the top of the sky. That turned out to be the tricky thing. Whereas getting all these clouds drifting along, which makes a much bigger visual impact, that was hard. And this is actually a metaphor for what it is like to be a programmer, because when you are on a project and the project manager doesn't know how to program, they have no way of knowing when they look at a requirement whether it's going to be simple or whether it's going to be incredibly hard. And in fact, they use their gut feel, and their gut feel is almost invariably wrong. So they think things like this. They would think that making clouds drifting across the sky like this would be a 5-day job, whereas just to get a circle to go up in the sky and down again and expand and contract, and well, they wouldn't even think about that. They'd just say, yeah, let's have a sun that's just a circle going up and then down again. They'd probably think that's something you should be able to do in a couple of hours, and as it turns out, it's completely the other way around. So Liz has asked, now that there is the sun and clouds, any plans for the moon as well? Well, initially I wasn't going to add the moon, and I had a spoiler at the beginning of this conversation before I explain why I had that first decision. And I have actually got a working prototype of the moon. It's not quite the same as the sun, because I need to map a picture of the moon onto it, and I've got that working. And actually, if you make it rotate, it looks absolutely wonderful. And that leads me into my story, which is one of the things that has influenced the Orthoverse is a series of books by a science fiction and fantasy writer called Jack Vance. Now, I first stumbled across Jack Vance when I was, it must have been, I can't have been more than 9 or 10, I think, because I'm pretty sure he got the books out of a library where I was living before I went to secondary school. And I read them in Dutch, so that suggests that it was that time too. And Jack Vance had a series of books called The Dying Earth, which are set way off in the future when the sun has expanded and has become red and the earth is about to end. And the inhabitants of this future, Earth off in the future, have discovered how to use magic, and they've forgotten a lot about science. So it's a fantasy story. It just happens to be set way off in the future. And it had quite a big impact on the fantasy world because, for example, in Dungeons and Dragons, the designers Gary Gygax and friends made wizards have to only be able to use a spell once. And that's straight from Jack Vance, because in The Dying Earth, wizards spend a whole day studying to memorize a spell, and as soon as they use it, it flees from their mind, and then they have to relearn it again. And there's a whole bunch of other things from Jack Vance's fantasy novels that crop up in fantasy movies and particularly role-playing games and computer games. And most people aren't even aware that where these things originated from. It's almost like they think, yeah, well, of course wizards forget a spell once they cast it, they have to relearn it. No, of course it's not, of course. Somebody came up with that idea. It's just stuck because it's a really good one. And here's a little bit of trivia for you. So the author's name is Jack Vance, V-A-N-C-E. And those of you who either watched Stranger Things or played Dungeons and Dragons, and the reason why it's in Stranger Things is because the characters in that play Dungeons and Dragons, there was an evil undead wizard overlord called Vecna, and in Stranger Things, and that was a character that was invented by Gary Gygax, I think, who was the inventor of Dungeons and Dragons, as I said earlier, and he named this Arch-Lich Vecna because it's an anagram of Vance. So it was kind of a nod to the fantasy ride. I'm not sure how I would feel if somebody decided that a nod to me would be to stick an anagram of my name on a hideous undead evil creature, but that's what they did. So who knows, little piece of fantasy and role-playing game trivia for you there, and if you're ever in some kind of quiz, maybe it'll win you a prize at the end of it. That's the only use I can think for it. But yes, anyway, I'm doing my usual thing of getting distracted. In the dying Earth, the moon doesn't exist anymore. It got kicked off ages ago. It's not there in the sky, and the sun is huge and red, and that was kind of initially what I was going for. But the thing is that a moon would actually look really nice. And so I've got a prototype working. I'm still working on making it look pretty. And sorry, I just winced there because I think the other guy just came flying past briefly before disappearing off again. I wonder if I can see him off in the distance anywhere. Ah, there we go. Yeah, there he is. Hello, the other guy. Yeah, so technically speaking, if I'm being true to Vance, there should not be a moon. However, I do want to have one. But what I am going to do is I'm going to cheat and make it simple. We're going to have the moon in the sky at night and the sun in the sky during the day, because that makes life a lot easier. And I cringe at the fact that I'm going to do this, but I'm going to do it because it's quick and easy. And then one day, maybe I'll have the time to actually completely emulate the physics and orbits of the celestial bodies. But the reason why I'm cringing... oh, someone's standing right inside me. There he is again. The reason why I'm cringing is my youngest kids are convinced that the sun comes out during the day and the moon only comes out at night. And I think there's a lot of kids out there that have this misconception. And to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if there aren't a lot of adults that have this misconception too. And the thing that is particularly frustrating with my kids is that I have made a point with each of them, as I've been walking to school with them, and I've walked all my kids to school up to until they hit the age of about 8. It's good exercise for me, and the youngest that I have are 6, so I've still got a couple more years, and then hopefully I will continue going for walks anyway. But I make a point of, if I spot the moon in the sky in the middle of the day, I point it out to them. And I've done this with all my kids, and the fact is, if you ask the ones who are under 12 or 13, does the moon come out during the day, they still say no. There's like something hardwired into the human brain that says the moon is a night thing and the sun is a day thing. I guess it's stories and stuff like that. I don't know what it is, but that's what they assume. So that's why I'm cringing at the fact that when I add the moon, it'll only come out at night and it'll rise just as the sun is setting. There are 2 advantages to this. The first advantage is that if the moon is rising as the sun is setting, that means it's a full moon. That means I don't have to do something crazy like have the moon as a sphere and then have like a hemisphere around it that rotates to give the right crescent moon or gibbous moon, and have to work out the vector between the moon and the sun in order to determine which parts should be lit and which are not. So there's that to start with. So that's one reason for not having the moon cropping up wherever and whenever it feels like. And the other one indeed is just the orbits. I mean, I'd have to work out, and it's 28 days, the cycles from the moon going from new moon to full moon and back to new moon again. So I'd have to work all that out. Similarly, the sun at the moment, it rises in the east and goes straight overhead and then sets in the west. And that is right, isn't it? Yes, because the sun rises, it's Japan. That's why they have the sun in their flag, land of the rising sun. I think that's what the red circle in their flag means. But anyway, yes, it rises in the east and sets in the west. And of course, you'd have to be living on the equator for it to do exactly that. So maybe the Orthoverse is on the equator. Here up in Finland, the well, if you go far enough north, the sun doesn't even rise for a month, even in the very north of Finland in the middle of winter. And then in the summer you have nearly 2 months where it doesn't set. And the reason for that is that I think it does actually go below the horizon, but it's not nighttime. You get kind of dusk. Or maybe it does just go round and round. I think it does just go round and round. Anyway, because of the inclination of the Earth to the sun. So, and I think, again, modelling that in a game like this, probably not worth the effort. Yeah, there, you can see a little bit just drifting along. It looks like a hill with a cell tower on it. That's a bad stitching of the images. So there was, if you go high up enough, you can see below the clouds, you can see that they're just a curtain. Oh, and that allows me to say one thing. So when I first thought I had this skybox working, it was absolutely great. And then I did the test engineer thing of, well, I'm going to go and walk to the sea in order to check that part of things is working. And I had only got halfway to the nearest sea when I suddenly walked through the sky. And then I realized that I can't make the box too big because it only renders things up to a certain distance out. And when I made the box small, that meant that it was a box that was kind of surrounding a bunch of lands, and there were other lands outside. And so because the box was stationary in the center of the rendering canvas for the web client, that meant that you could actually walk out of it. And similarly, you could approach the sun. When I first had the sun working, because I was working on both of them at the same time, mainly on the skybox to begin with, and I just stuck a sphere in the sky representing the sun, and I forgot that actually, and it's a very easy problem to solve, which is you just consider the fact that when you're driving along and you look out the window, it looks like the sun or the moon is following you. So what you do is every step that you take, your position vector changes. You just add that to the position of the box, and so it's kind of like as you run towards the sun or as you run towards the edge of the box moves away from you, and that gives the illusion that it's off in the distance and it never can be reached. In fact, what it's doing is it's just running away from you. So I've had a lot of chatting about rendering today, and what I wanted to do was also go and visit Ken's pyramid, just to show that off. So I hope you found this interesting anyway, guys. It depends on how interested you are in 3D rendering and stuff like that. Right, anyway, but first I'm going to go and say hi to the other guy, because I think he said hi to me in the chat earlier. Maybe he's not in the live stream though. Hi, Richard. Right, he's jumping off over that hill. It looks like he's flying. Has he got some kind of trick that allows it? Ah, do you know what he's done? He's gone in and he's messed with the gravity. So there are variables in there that say this is how much gravity is. And what Richard has done is he's actually gone in and hacked the gravity value, and that is allowing him to fly. Now you have to be very careful when you mess with the physics of the of what is the mind flayer bot, actually, because if you get the numbers too wrong, it causes it to crash. So the reason why I set the jumping to this is that I found that if I set it higher, occasionally things go horribly wrong and you get stuck. But in the meantime, he's having fun having super leaping boots, and I'm not going to do that because I've got things to demonstrate. Right, so I'm going to go and let's see, we've got 16 minutes. Can I get to Ken's pyramid in 16 minutes? You have a short period of time, Infotrix, to say, no, please don't go to my pyramid, and I will pay attention to that. But if you don't, that's where we're going. So firstly, it is to the southeast, to Karkonhenge, if I remember correctly. And then we want to go east without going through the teleporter. Off we go, and then almost immediately north. And the southeast one is interesting because there's a lake right next to the henge. I think it's the only one that has that. And then we have to head north. Right, so there we go. Can't go too fast because I'll fall through the earth because it hasn't rendered in time. And here we have lakes, the annoying slowdown when you're trying to run through the Orthoverse. Off we go, into the trees. Like that song by The Cure. A Forest. That's the name of the song. There's a song called A Forest, which had a line into the trees. Anyway, so I should just have to head north, and I should be there very shortly. Yeah, look at that. I can see Ken floating in the distance there because of the thing I talked about last time, which gives me a clue that he's inside this. Right, he's built even more stuff since the last time I was here. Oh gosh, so I can't even jump onto it anymore. So Ken has built this massive white, blue-lined, black-based pyramid, and now we need to find an entrance. And there's a window. Can we? Oh, there we go. Are we in? I think we are. So you saw that pyramid. Now what Ken has done, I have never been in this part before, is he has created masses of mazes inside his pyramid. I wish I'd had my distance rendering a bit higher, so you could see quite how huge this is. Although it looks like a hangar on the Death Star at the moment, doesn't it? So if I go that way, you'll see that there we go. So now I'm in the middle of Ken's gigantic pyramid. I don't know what possessed him to decide to cover the entire land that he has, but he's covered it with the pyramid. And when I was in here exploring it, I think it was last night, I sort of wandering along. Is that the other guy again? Oh no, that's Ken. Hello Ken, good to see you. Yeah, when I was in here last, I found a lake, and then there was a pit in the bottom, and then I found myself in trouble, in a maze that I couldn't get out of. I haven't explored this bit before. What have we got here? Am I supposed to jump there? There we go. So Ken has kind of gone for the Imperial Army of Star Wars. Is it the Imperial? I can't remember. The Empire, anyway. Sort of their design of hangars and bases and star bases and things like that, combined with what looks like those sort of soft play, safe kiddie play areas that you get in restaurants. And in Finland there's one chain called Hoplop who do that. I wonder if they still exist after COVID. I hope they do, because I imagine they will have suffered. So he sort of combined a kids soft play area with 3 people now, with the sort of aesthetic of the Death Star, which is interesting. Right, is Ken trying to get me to go somewhere? Let's follow. Alright. So yeah, if you go in the basement of this place, you'll just find lots and lots of mazes, and they're a nightmare to get out of. Why can I not get down there? There we go. Hop. And I've lost him. Oh, there he is. Yeah, so if you think you can outwit Ken's mazes, do go and investigate. Right, here we go. Has he shown us how to get onto the roof terrace? And does it have a restaurant? And do they have decent vegan food? Okay. Right, there we go. And then we can get inside. I don't think I would have discovered this myself in a hurry. Ken's got very good at this sort of because the characters. Oh look, there we go. There is a terrace. Right, no tables though. He's got very good at this. I hadn't thought about this. It's like the characters are 2 blocks high. So if you make a 1 block gap, you can see through it, but you can't get there. So he made a maze where you could see the layout of the maze, but you couldn't jump over the walls. And I think that was actually a pretty neat idea. Right, anyway, so I'm getting the tour from him. And here we are at the top. The golden control room. Right, what is that? Is that a pit all the way down? Knowing him, I'm going to have to check it out, aren't I? No, I'm not going to go down there. I bet it is a pit that goes all the way to the bottom of his land. I wonder if we can get onto the very top, though. Probably not. I wouldn't. Okay. There's another entrance there. Up. Yeah, okay. Right. So, yeah, I would bet that that would be an endless pit. Yep, look at that. I'm absolutely right. I knew it would be an endless multicolored pit down into his maze. Right. So that probably wasn't the best move to make. Okay, well, so anyway, Pen Orb Dell, that's the place to visit if you want to go and explore Ken's mazes. It's head southeast. Ken says he lost me. Yes, you lost me because I fell down the pit. In fact, I didn't fall down it. This time I went down it on purpose, just to check whether my suspicions of what you would do were actually true. So yeah, you head southeast at the Orthoverse, and then you head north and around the lake to the east, and it's there. And he, seriously, he's just built, I mean, here you can see the maze, right? And it's just this huge red maze. That's one of, I don't know how many mazes he's built. If you can get out of this one, then you go up a level and you're in a turquoise maze. And that's the one where I just eventually gave up. And because I had, unfortunately, had some work to do. And then I had to go and add clouds and the sun to the Orthoverse. But maybe this is where the could be. Oop, let's go around there. Anyway, it's kind of it's sort of, yeah, it's interesting to explore. There's more steps. There we go. Right, so now I'm in the. Also, the turquoise maze is not above the red one; it's below it. So I don't want to be going there. That's the wrong way to go. Now I'm even deeper in the maze dungeons. Right. Anyway, I've got to have a quick sip of water. I think I'm going to wrap this one up early this time, guys, because my throat is starting to feel a bit sore. I hope you found the chat about 3D rendering and the difficulties of celestial and orbital mechanics interesting, and also I think I chucked in a few stories. Oh, I know, there was one thing before I go. Let me have a sip of water. I was going to talk about the green flash. I always say that I'm going to do stuff, and then I don't do it. Right, so let's see. What I need to do is I need to go up on a hill, so the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. And when it's going over, it goes from being red to being yellow, and then it becomes red, and then it sinks below the horizon. Now, to save on processing issues, when it goes below the horizon, what I do is I changed its color to black, and I move it to being directly underground so that nobody will ever see it. And then it just sits there for the 8,000 ticks that it takes for the next day to start. And then it gets kicked back into activity. It immediately jumps to the horizon on the east, and like where I'm looking now, and then it rises up again. So, and the thing is that what I had done is I had changed the color of the sun and then moved it in that order. And so what happened was there was a point where I was checking it, where I was looking to the west. I think I was on one of the towers actually in Fangwanina. And that's where I should have gone to talk about this. And so what happened was I caught the briefest of glimpses of the sun turning black before it shot off into the underworld, not to be seen for another 8,000 ticks. And so it flashed, the sun flashed. It was red, it was sitting there happily, and then suddenly black, and then gone. So if instead of picking the color black, I had picked the color green as the color that means the sun is no longer active, then there would have been a green flash just before the sun set. Instead, I got a black flash. And then it struck me that if we're in a simulation, maybe that's what a green flash is. Maybe it's the sun just about to be turned off and packed away until it is needed again 6 or 8 or 12 hours later. Now, let me say, I don't think that we are actually living in a simulation. I have no idea what the genuine reality behind our existence is, But I'm just saying that if I accidentally create a black flash, which could have been a green flash if I'd just gone for the opposite color of red in my world, then maybe that's where the green flash in our world is coming from. And then I'll add in the end that no, I don't believe that at all. But it's funny how, again, I had something in this virtual world that mimicked a property of the real world without me actually setting out to implement it. It was just that I'd made a design decision, and the upshot of that design decision was that it showed a feature that mirrored a feature of our real world. So I thought that was kind of interesting anyway. Maybe nobody else does. I don't know. Right. And having said that, I am now definitely going to be wrapping up because I can feel my voice giving way. I don't know how people can stream for 4, 5, 6 hours at a time. Maybe they get practice. Maybe I'm just not relaxed enough in the way I speak, and I need to work a bit on that. But that's it for today. I'm glad that people like the new sky. I'm still tweaking it. Maybe this time next week, because there will be the Orthoverse Is Doomed live stream number 7, same time next week. Maybe you'll get to see the spinning moon. So the backstory there will be that just as in Jack Vance's Dying Earth future, the moon had been knocked out of orbit and disappeared. Maybe this is the point in the Dying Earth universe where the moon is about to be knocked away. Because what I would need to do is work out how to stop, or rather make the sphere spin at just the right speed to have it facing the Earth all the time. It's a lot easier just to come up with some kind of sci-fi backstory about how they moved the moon, and in the process they knocked its orbit out of tilt, and now you can see the dark side of the moon too. Anyway, that's it. It's been fantastic for you to join me. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll hope that I will see you in the next one in 1 week time. Bye for now.
Keep me alive with your unpredictable teachings. Keep me alive with the knowledge you give me. Keep me alive with your intellectual rigor.